First of all, I just want to say thank you to everyone joining the webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about a new major update to the Patch My PC Home Updater. So my name's Justin. I'm the founder and CEO here at Patch My PC. Before we jump into some of the history of the Home Updater and the origins of the company, I thought it'd be interesting to show who we are at a glance today, like what our company looks like, how many team members we have. So Patch My PC itself actually was started with the Home Updater. So that's our consumer-based product that is used to update and install apps on personal computers. So that was actually the original idea. I'll dig into that a little more. Throughout the origins of the company in 2013, we added a commercial aspect to it. And we actually have 7,500 enterprise customers that are using our services within Config Manager or Intune for managing applications and patching and helping their companies to stay more secure. Within that business focus, it's used on about 23 million endpoints across those companies. Within that paid catalog, we have about 2,000 apps. In correlation within the free Home Updater that we'll be really spending some time on today, one of the things that we introduced in version 5, which we just released, is we increased that app count to 512. The previous version was about 300 apps that we had there. The company also has about 115 team members in growing as well, and we have 8 Microsoft MVPs. Another interesting metric from our business customers, we talked about that, but one thing that we have been getting some installation metrics for is our Home Updater now. So we did a soft launch of the Home Updater last week, and we've already got over 6,000 people that are using that on their personal computers as well. So interesting to see since the last week of that launch, getting a lot of adoption without having really any marketing. This will be our first time that we're actually talking and intentionally promoting it for the Home Updater. So that's us at a glance. A little bit of the origin story that I think would be interesting is, where did this Home Updater, how did it get started? Why did Patch My PC become a company? And what was the idea that kind of correlated to those events? So it was actually kind of an interesting story. So I was right out of high school. This was my first day job, and I was an IT help desk technician. So I was first level, so like break fix, like I would go and replace hard drives and computers, copy user data, like just the traditional first IT job, right? And one of the things that our team was responsible within the help desk was every month it was part of a government organization. So there was a huge focus on IT security. And one of the aspects of that was the ability to report on and patch third-party applications. So I was learning like, hey, how can I automate some of this stuff? It was actually quite manual at the time. Like I would drive around like this facility to all these different buildings, look at a list of all these outdated PCs and try to figure out how to automate it. It was before we were using large-scale tools like Microsoft Configuration Manager or Intune to do that type of management in bulk. So it would be very manual process, sometimes like having a thumb drive, powering on computers, like having all the latest apps like Adobe and Java and Flash Player, where I would go and kind of do this manually. And from that problem, started to learn things, had some mentors to learn how to do things like scripting with VB script on how could we automate some of this stuff. So it was actually a problem of staying secure and trying to make sure that this could be more automated in the way that we were doing it today. So kind of an interesting problem. From a consumer perspective, a lot of these challenges with keeping apps up to date also apply as well, but certainly from a business perspective, it's a key focus. And one thing, Jordan, I'm going to hand over to him to talk about, some of the importance, not only at a business level, but also some of the risk at a consumer as well for why you might want to keep your apps up to date.
So if you haven't heard of it before, one of the major data breaches that's happened in recent memory is the Equifax data breach. Now, this is, of course, a commercially focused data breach that did happen, where hackers were actually able to exploit a vulnerability. It was a CVE 2017-5638, I believe, with a vulnerability in Apache products in order to get data. Now, we may think about this as a problem. We may think about vulnerable software as a problem that only necessarily impacts businesses per se, and it might cause businesses to suffer impact. However, there's also a corollary where we have a responsibility when we work for a company or anything like that, where we need to keep our home computers safe as well. If any of you remember, there was a recent vulnerability, Log4j, that was able to influence computers and cause all kinds of different code to start running arbitrarily on devices. One of the most common places that was found was in several video games that were out there and available on the market, where that put all of those machines and your data as a person then became very valuable to attackers, where they could try to collect that data and learn things about you using exploits like that, so that they could then leverage that data in things like social engineering attacks at work. Because if they could manage to exploit your home or personal device, they can learn enough things to then start trying to move laterally into organizations using social engineering. Now, of course, that isn't meant to tell necessarily a scary story, but it is a prelude to how do we start to update our computers at home, because home computers have the same problem as work computers as well. We end up with all kinds of bits and pieces of software, bits and pieces of games. And so Home Updater can help minimize a lot of those different challenges along the way for it. So it's important to think about, not just from a commercial and work perspective, how do you keep yourself and your company safe? How do you keep yourself safe and your own personal data safe, and its impact on yourself, its impact on the business that you work for, and its impact on your community as well, just from a reputation perspective?
Awesome. Thank you, Jordan. So a little bit of the why, the problem that we were seeing, how it's not only important at work, but also for your personal computers, was really the problem that led to Home Updater and in trying to learn, like, hey, could this be something that people would use and find value of? Now, this would have been 2011, and this is kind of fun. So looking back on when Patch My PC was started, you can actually scan the QR code if you want to. This will go back to the Wayback Machine, where you can get a glimpse of like how the website looks. What you can notice there is, I did not have any graphic design skills at that point. This was just really a hobby of mine of, if I learn how to code something and put it on the internet, like not really having the expectation of what will this become, just will people use it? So it was really just a kind of a hobby of mine of just, hey, can I do this thing that will help people update their apps? Kind of this problem that I was facing at work, and trying to learn how I could do that on my personal computer and learning the script. But this is an early version of the website where you can kind of get a glimpse of how things looked at the initial launch of Patch My PC back in 2011. Now, the first version of Home Updater, it was very, very basic, and it's kind of fun reflecting back on that. When it was developed, there was this concept here that was called critical apps, and this was just the decision that I had made in the past, where there were certain apps that I thought were very common, and even if the apps were not installed in your computer, it would always install them. Looking back, it was kind of like malware of, hey, like these 5 apps are common, like you always get them and you always get the latest version. And then, there's this concept called optional apps, which you would be able to install those and it would update them if it was detected. But just the first iteration was very, just trying to figure things out. So it was fun to reflect on that. But a couple of kind of technical things. It was written in VB.net. That was a pretty easy transition from some of the scripting, like the non-UI versions that I was doing, VB script, and then converted that, trying to learn how to code. And the Home Updater was originally in VB.net. In the early days in 2011 and the first editions after that, one thing that was really cool, we had a small group of really key contributors in the community that were really passionate about that project, and it also started to get picked up on websites that kind of talked about software. So Major Geeks was a website. We had CNET, and people started to use that as Home Updater started to get better over time. So this was just a kind of a glimpse of what it looked like in the early days. We then have an example of what it looked like in V2. So a couple years later, we released version 2. It no longer had the apps that would always get installed. It was more, just based on what was there or what you wanted to install. So example of version 2 of the Home Updater. Version 3, we can see just some changes in the way it was designed on the left side. So just iteratively over time. And then version 4, this was actually the last major version of the Home Updater before we're doing this whole relaunch of version 5. So this actually came out in 2018. A big focus of the company around that time frame was really leaning in pretty heavily with our commercial products that integrated in with ConfigMan and Intune. And to be honest, like within the Home Updater, we haven't spent a lot of investment over a 5-year period from 2018 until maybe 2023. And then over the last year, we've been really investing a lot of engineering. We have a team kind of focused on making this product better, providing value back to the community for those people who are, security conscious that want to make sure their home computers are also patched. And of course, all of these versions are completely free, right? So there was a period where Home Updater, just transparently was kind of on the back burner as we shifted to really put engineering efforts and develop our commercial products. But really exciting to see kind of the origins of the company now getting a team really back focused on that to really provide a better consumer free product for people out in the communities. And then really what we have up next is for the next 40 minutes, we'll have time to really demo the product and then really focus on Q&A throughout that as well. So let me jump over and we'll kind of talk about some of the changes to Home Updater v5 and some of the differences there as well. So if it's your first time using it, you're just going to go to our website and then go to the Home Updater. Now, one key thing to note in this version of Home Updater v5, it is now installer based. So version 4 was a portable app. We have received some feedback that people did enjoy that feature where it was portable. We are considering like, hey, what would that look like in the future if we, consider that feedback? And we'll be sure to post a link where you can vote that up if that's something that you would like. But one thing to note is installer based now. And that gives us a lot more flexibility in the way that we can self-update our own products to make sure that we're getting new features down to all our consumers. So what I've done is I have already installed that on a computer. So just to show some of the differences, I'll actually launch our current v4 just to show what it looks like today. So this is version 4, our portable version that was available in kind of the main version until we released v5 last week. So, on the left side, you'll see some basic things like our software, our options, our scheduler, and about. But if I jump over, a big investment that we made in version 5 is changing the whole way that this was coded. So we've re-architected this into a more modern framework in the way that we can show the UI, the way that we can make it more dynamic. And a key improvement there is we can now add apps dynamically on the back end so that we can add more products based on the feedback that we're hearing from people. We can change UI elements, but just a huge investment architecturally from how it works from that portable version to a more scalable version that we can iterate on much quicker. So a couple of key things that you'll notice here that's different is we now have what we call the My Apps tab. So My Apps, this is going to show everything that is currently installed on that device and whether or not it's up to date or out of date. We then have a second tab here called the App Library. And this is going to be the list of all the products we support within the Home Updater catalog. So for example, within My Apps, I can do a couple of things here. So I could, first glance, I can see, hey, I've got an outdated version of Chrome, version 77. If I wanted to update just an individual app through the user interface, I can just click the outdated button here, and then it will automatically update an individual app. So we'll see that update in the background. By default, everything will be silent. So if I go look, we should have Chrome up to date here in just another minute or two. So there we go. I can also bulk update. So if I just want to update all 4 of these, I can click Start Updater. That's going to get all the apps downloading in the background and queuing them up so that it can update all those apps at once in just a single click. Now, if I jump over to my app library, this is where I can see the full list of apps that are available in the catalog for the Home Updater. So not only can we update and keep existing products that you have on your home PC up to date, But we can also use this to install new products if you have a new computer, or maybe there's a new app that you want to get installed on your computer. So for example, let's just, let me think if there's a simple one here that's not very large of a download. Let's look at Audacity, for example. So I'll click install. So we'll see this app is downloading, installing silently. It's now installed over on the My Apps tab. So I can see those 4 apps were automatically updated when I click that. And I also have a new app that automatically got installed here. So if I go, I can just go and launch that. And I just installed a new product in a single click. I didn't have to go manually download it, manually install it. We were able to do that from the app library in a single click. Now, one thing that we also have is we have some designs where we can go to a list view. So let me go to the list view. So depending on your screen size and your preference, we can swap both the My Apps tab into a list or a grid view, depending on what you prefer here. We can also rescan. So if we were to update something outside of Patch My PC and you just wanted that to be reflected, just a quick rescan or clicking F12, we'll reevaluate things. We can also filter. So we have a list in the app library. We have normal apps. So these are apps that would actually get installed on your device, non-portable apps. And then we also have portable apps. So these would typically be an app that is an exe file or a zip file where they don't actually get installed on your device. For these products, there is an option here where you want to choose where you want to download any of those portable apps. So there's an option here, and I can click on edit. So for example, by default, it will go to your desktop. So let's say that you didn't want to put that in your desktop. Maybe you wanted it to go into your My Documents folder, and then just call it portable apps. We can then place that over there, and then any portable app that we download will go there. So for example, click CM Trace. I'll click this app here. I'll click this one here. I'll click CCleaner. And what that will do is if I click the icon here, I can also jump to where those portable apps folder are. So I can see, okay, here's the version of these different apps. It looks like for 3 of them, they came in as zips, and then one was an exe. Auto runs, let me go click on that, AnyDesk. So this is a way that you can quickly get portable apps downloaded and installed. Now, one thing to note here, so let me open up auto runs, for example. I can see I've got that portable version. We will, once you install a portable app from Patch My PC, we will also keep track of when those apps need an update. Now, one important thing to note here is that if you go out and you're just downloading portable binaries or zip files from the vendor and you put them in here, we're not going to keep track of what version was originally downloaded and when it needs an update. But as long as you downloaded and installed that portable app and you downloaded it to this folder from our app, we'll keep track of when those portable apps need an update, and we'll keep those up to date within that folder as well. So just something to note between portable files here as well as non-portable that would actually install on your device. Okay. From a settings perspective, like a lot of these were carried over. It's more organized than what it was before, but there's a few things here. So for example, if you just, every time that you open Patch My PC, if we detect any outdated apps, if you just wanted to automatically basically click start updates, that's what that setting will do. It will, whenever you manually open the app, it will automatically trigger an update where you don't have to click start update. So just a scenario that some people might use. We will be talking about how you can have a scheduled task that we create so that it can always update in the background, even if you're not using Patch My PC Home Updater. We can make sure that it's going silently. And I do know that was a question about, does it run as a service or does it just run under a user? So we'll dig into that a little more as well. Another option is if an app is open, like some scenarios, like let's say you have a certain app open and it's applying an update, we can automatically close that app for you to make sure there's no files in use. So sometimes, apps may not install successfully if they're in use. So this is a way that you can close those apps out. Couple of other options. So we can choose whether or not you want to have updates or apps install silently. By default, they will install silently. So if I come in here and if I click on install an app, I don't actually have to go through any user interface. If I go click 7-Zip, we just automatically install that silently. So I can see 7-Zip is now installed. If you wanted to just download it and have the installer launch, you could manually click next, next, next if you preferred that. But typically, most users will go silent and make sure that those apps install silently. Creating system restore points. So if you want to have a restore point before any update is done, you can have that automatically check here. We also have a preview channel. So if you wanted to get preview versions of Home Updater, you can opt into that. So just an optional feature if you want to stay, on the cutting edge. Like as we're developing features, you might get things a little earlier than typical. A few other things, like if you want to minimize it, if you wanted to go to the tray instead of just closing it, so we can minimize, it comes down here to the system tray. Same thing if we wanted to click the close. So if you wanted to click close, but you wanted to still keep it running, it could go to the tray here, where you could have quick access to it to bring it back open. A few other big things. So we can also change the download location. So this is where installer files will get downloaded to when we're doing updates and when we are doing initial installations. This is where all those installers will go. Also have a log file. So if we go to program data, so I'll actually just open up that really quick. Program data and then patch my PC. We will have a Home Updater log here. So whenever any updates are taking place or any new installations are happening, like here, for example, we can see here's the 7-Zip installation happening. We will log all of that out so you can always see what is happening here. Uninstaller, we do also have an uninstaller here. So I can see, if I just installed 7-Zip, I just installed Audacity, I could select multiple here and I could click uninstall selected. And that's going to go ahead and launch the uninstallers for those vendors. So I can see Audacity, I think, was open. And then I can also uninstall 7-Zip here. So just some improvements here. We didn't used to have icons in our uninstaller, so that was a improvement that we made. Now, one thing that I want to cover is the scheduler. So this is actually a feature that we had a question about of, does this run as a service? Do I have to manually go and open this up to update apps? So what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to switch to a different computer that still has some outdated applications on them. So let me go ahead and launch Home Updater over here. Yep, so on this device, I can see I've got 5 outdated applications and I have 1 app that's up to date. So one question, we want to make sure that users are staying secure, like even if they're not manually opening up Home Updater all the time. So the way that we can do that is we have this tab here called the scheduler. So if you want to have Patch My PC automatically check and update apps, we can add a scheduler here. So I'm just going to turn this on. Let's say I want to run this every day at, let's say, 5 p.m. Right? We can choose, do we want to do it daily, every weekday, every month? But this is where we can kick things off to check if there are any outdated apps that should be automatically updated. There's a few configurations that you can do that correspond to the scheduled task itself. So do you want it to run whether or not a user's logged in? So there's options here that we can do. So I'm going to go ahead and click on save. And what that's going to do is that's going to create a scheduled task. So the Home Updater itself does not run always in the background as a service. So it's not agent based. But what we'll do is if you do a scheduled task, we'll be able to kick it off in the background for you, regardless of whether you're logged in or not, at a certain time based on what you configure. So for example, let me just go to apps here. So I can currently see I have 5 outdated apps. Instead of waiting till 5:30, I'm going to go ahead and kick this off, this scheduled task that's going to automatically update any outdated app that is supported in our catalog. So for example, if I look in the log file under program data, I can see things happening. So I can see the Chrome installer is now getting downloaded. I can see Node.js is getting downloaded and updated. And this is all happening automatically. So if I just give that a second, we should see these apps all update here in a minute. And this would be how you could make sure that anytime new updates are coming, you can run Home Updater on a schedule where we'll make sure that you're always getting the latest patches on that device. So if I go ahead and let's open it now, it looks like it's still just finishing up a few updates here. Let's just see if this is done. So there we go. We can see, that scheduled task. I manually kicked that off, and we updated all 5 of those applications that were previously out of date. So that's how, like, on a schedule, we can make sure that your computers are staying patched, even if you're not manually opening this all the time. Okay. And then lastly, we've got the About tab. So we've got some of the key contributors that have helped iterate Home Updater over time. We've got some how-to guides, so you can click here and go to a YouTube page. If there's ever any support, we do have support over on our forum. So it's very community-based. So if you're passionate about Home Updater and you want to sign up for our forum, that is community-driven, where we're helping the people that are using our free Home Updater over the forum as well. So if you ever need help, that's the place to go. And then lastly, things like checking for updates or release notes. So that's really the key updates here. It's a huge redesign, very modern. We've added it so that we can dynamically add apps on the fly to be able to add more to the list based on feedback that we're getting. But that's really the demo that I wanted to give from a live demo perspective. So maybe we could read off some of the questions for anything that we would want to answer live. Corey, if there's anything queued up here.
Sure thing. One of the first ones we had here was why was the functionality that removed the icons from the desktop removed from the release that was available in the previous version? Also, why does the portable apps folder appear on the desktop when no portable apps are installed?
Yeah, good feedback there. So let's see here. So the desktop icons, let's take a look. Yeah, the icons, we might have to add that back. I know there was a feature that we had in the portable Home Updater where you could create a shortcut specifically for Patch My PC itself. We did remove that feature just because it's installed now and it automatically makes a desktop icon. But there might have been a scenario, I know there was an option to delete the shortcuts for the actual applications that we install. So that's good feedback. I think that that's one that we could likely get added back in to the product pretty quickly because I know that that's data that we still have. So that's a good question. So I'm guessing that's probably specifically the option where we would delete shortcuts for new apps that we installed. So good feedback there. And then what was the second one? Was it the portable?
Portable apps folder appear on the desktop when no portable apps are being installed.
Okay, no, good feedback there as well. So, oh, we're already running. So what we could probably make a change there is only create the folder in the event that you install a portable app. I think by default we went on the desktop, but we did show how you could change that location. But probably some good feedback there where in the next update we could make it so that that folder only gets created in the event that you've actually clicked install in a portable app. So good feedback there. And then it would just be up to you to decide where you want to put that default folder down here for portables. But good feedback. I think we can make a change there where it does not default to the desktop and we only create the folder in the event that you come into your app library and you actually click install in a portable app. So good feedback. I think that that's an easy change that we could get added there.
Perfect. Thank you. Next one from Kevin. Does the new version of Patch My PC for Home work as a service or just run under the user's context? It seems like the old version does not patch things when users are not in the local administrator group.
Yeah, so when you set up the scheduled task, so let's just go to this machine we configured that on. when you create the scheduled task, you will have to have been running Patch My PC as admin, just because we do need to have that to update apps and create tasks. But if you set up this scheduler here like we did, so we turn this on, we click save, um, it will automatically run regardless of whether or not the user is logged in by default. So that's a configuration that you can optionally turn off so that it would only update if someone's logged in, but that probably doesn't make sense. You'd probably want to update even if the computer's locked or if it's just booted up but no one's logged in. And the option that will get set here, if I look at the update app scheduled task that we created, it will always run as admin. So even though it's not running all the time as an agent, it will run as a system where it will update the apps regardless of whether the user is admin or not, if you initially created that scheduled task. So I think that should hopefully answer that one.
Perfect. Let's see here. We have one with someone is asking if this can be used for underneath their parents to set it up. They don't have to interact with it. And there's another one kind of focusing on there's a limit for how many devices can use it. I think there's several kind of questions focusing on how many devices it can be used on and the limitations of I guess around that.
Sure. Yeah, so one of the key things here with Home Updater is it is designed for consumer use. So the intent of it is not that you would go use this in a company to keep all your computers up to date. It's in the terms like it's consumer focused. So if you have, you're kind of your IT person, you go help your family, like perfectly fine. But the scenario here is you wouldn't be using this in a company at scale to go patch it. Like that's not what it's designed for. That would probably be a scenario where you could look at our Intune ConfigMan integrations where you can stay patched, like you can have reporting back into a central location. So it's really consumer focused. There's not specific, like, if you have 20 PCs at your home that you're using, no problem installing that. It's really the focus of this is being consumer, not commercial.
Perfect. And then I kind of have a question to piggyback off of that. If the home updater is free, how are we monetizing it? Gathering data or detecting updates from personal computers in order to use them in enterprise product to be more efficient and have more apps. We did kind of mention that we're not monetizing it, but the data that we're collecting, do you want to go over some of that?
Yeah, so it's that's a good question. So like you mentioned, Corey, it's not something that is making us money, right? I think there's some brand aspect to it. Part of who we are as a company is really trying to create solutions. When I started the company, it was all based on Home Updater and this free thing to put out on the internet. So I think truly like we certainly get some brand awareness. We give value to home consumers. In some scenarios, people like maybe if they're the IT admin of their business, like maybe there's some indirect kind of value for us on Home Updater, but that's not the intent of it. As far as things that we collect, it's very basic. So how many installs we have. There's a little bit around the ARP data, so we can better understand what products we should focus on adding that gives the most value, but it's very minimal with the way that it directly ties in to like our enterprise catalog. So they're pretty distinct today. That doesn't mean that we're not going to continue to try to figure out how can we make this better based on the data that potentially we would use. But today, I'd say they're quite separate, but I think it's really a brand and just making sure that we're giving back to communities and home users and helping them stay more secure. But it's very light, like with what we collect.
Perfect. So another one that was kind of called out here is the what engine is used in the background? Is it chocolatey or is it something else?
It's all in-house, so we don't use any third party. We maintain both the catalog within our business product as well as our home updater. Like it's like we monitor everything. We scan things through VirusTotal. Like we don't depend on anything like a Winget or anything like a chocolatey. Like it's our company that's maintaining, tracking, keeping everything up to date.
Perfect. Next one we have here is does Home Updater keep itself updated?
It does, yeah. So by default, we've got updates turned on. You can check for updates as well manually, but every night there's going to be a scheduled task. And that's one of the reasons that we swapped over to an installer-based product to make sure that we could more easily self-update. So when you install it, there's going to be a self-updater task that will check and update itself to make sure that you're getting the latest version of fixes and products that we're getting added here.
Perfect. And this is a question. There was a few questions about different apps. There was someone questioning if there are Windows Store apps. And I know that we don't necessarily support Windows Store apps themselves, but is there a determining factor for what kind of apps that we do support and which ones that we want to support in the future? Don't we have a link for a feature request for apps in the future?
Yeah, so good question. So we don't support store apps. The Windows Store does a pretty good job there. Um, the apps we do have, if you go to our Home Updater page, there is a FAQ about how to get apps added, and then there's a page where you can vote for new apps. Let me see if I
We
can
can put
find
that in
that.
the chat as
Yep,
well as
that'd be great.
to give people some visibility.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, cool.
Thank you. Let's see, next one. Do we support Windows ARM-based systems?
Yeah, good question. So we don't specifically support apps on ARM today. Most of them are either going to be Win32 or both 32 or 64-bit version of apps. Something we're thinking about, but yeah, like the app itself should work, but like actually getting ARM specific apps, we don't have that many of those in our catalog today for Home Updater, but definitely something we're thinking about.
Perfect. Thank you very much. One here from Chris. Will the new Home Updater replace or update the old one when downloaded and installed?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So um, we are thinking through that. So the way that we launched this version is really all we've done is on the main Home Updater page, we've swapped out the old download link into our new installer. So what we want to do is really get a soft launch of net new installs of people that are going and downloading it will get the new version. Now, over the next couple months, we will be, and this is actually an FAQ that we added to the page because this is going to be a question that I think we get. We will have a auto upgrade feature for people on portable, both in the beta channel and the main channel of the current version 4. So they will update. I think our current approach is probably a month down the road. We're going to convert people from the previous version of Home Updater that are on the beta channel of Home Updater. We'll convert them into the new version, version 5. And then we'll give that a few more weeks, make sure that the upgrades are going smoothly. And then any other version that's not in the beta channel will also get upgraded. So it's something intentionally we're not doing at launch. We're just doing net new downloads. So in the event that you want to do Home Updater and you want to try it today, you can just go download and install it. And then, if you're done with the old version, you can simply delete that exe, the portable file. So we will do that in the future, but we're still just figuring out timeline and how we're going to roll that out at scale. But we will have a migration for people that aren't proactively going and downloading it in the next month or two is kind of what we expect.
Awesome. Next one we have here. How are applications installed? For instance, are they executed as logged on user? And is the assumption the user has administrator privileges?
Yeah, so so when you're launching Home Updater, like if you're in our UI manually, it would be as administrator. So any apps, just because most of them are going to be system based, they would install with administrative rights, typically for all users, where that's the default command line for most products. So if you're manually running this, sorry, light just turned off. Let me see if I can get this back on. So if you're running it, it would be as administrator. In the event that you're using a scheduled task and you have the option to run whether or not a user would be logged in, that would be launching a system. So you would be installing for all users, like it would be admin either way. Now, if an app is installed per user, like even if it's running as admin, like 1Password, for example, that would just be up to the installer to handle.
Thank you. And we have two questions here. First one, they talk about a company that uses the enterprise version, and they want to share out the link to the Home Updater for employees to use for their personal machines. Do they want them to use the enterprise version or the Home Updater version? I think we do want to actually, at that point, Home Updater be something completely separate for them to share out with their employees or coworkers. Is that correct?
Yeah, like if it's, helping keep their employees like personal computers up to date, yeah, no problem sharing out like the home updater, like why you would install it. Um, so yeah, no, totally fine. It's funny. I was actually researching some people linking to our website, and I noticed even, a scenario was, let me see if I can paste this in. MIT, for example, had a page kind of publicly for their team. Let me see if I can find it here, patch my PC. But they were linking to us from just kind of like, hey, how do you keep your software up to date on your personal computer? So wouldn't be a problem, and definitely something that would be encouraged. Like if you want to share with employees of your company, like how would you keep these apps up to date on your personal computer? Like that should be perfectly fine as long as it's consumers. Of
Something else
course, like
talking about
on the company side, you would likely be using one of our products either on Intune or Config Manager to manage your company devices. But for those employees on their personal ones, like that would be a scenario where you could certainly make that available and make sure they're aware of that and the benefits.
Thank you. Is this version still doing a hash verification?
Yeah, so we do have hashes in the definitions that we use to just confirm like nothing has changed. So that should still be part of the process of validation. We also look at things like virus total in both catalogs to ensure that we're doing our due diligence and we're not just getting things from like public sources like WinGets or things like that. So one of the things that we pride ourselves on is the level we take in both verification of the original downloads that we're adding to our catalog, as well as confirming like throughout that process as we're downloading from vendors, things match throughout the process of updating and downloading.
All right, next one. What happens if the computer isn't on during the time the self-update task would usually run?
It would not update. Let's see, there is an option, I think, and I'm not 100% sure if we enable it by default. But if it was off, it would not update. There is a condition like if it was missed, what to do. Let's see.
But it would end up starting on the next time the machine starts, correct? Based on parameters that you set within the app. It would not run when the
Yeah,
computer's off.
okay. Yeah, so this is yeah, it looks like for specifically the self updates of us updating Home Updater ourselves, if it was off, it should, when the computer's powered back on, it looks like this is enabled by default. So that's our self update. And then if you created a scheduled task where we update other apps, it looks like this is also turned on by default. So hopefully it should just kick in the Windows scheduled task to make sure that we run that if it was missed in the default time.
There's a question about getting a version of Home Updater that's licensed for commercial use. I don't think we've considered this at the time. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it's not something that we've actively considered. We're always looking at the market and needs throughout the space. Like right now, we're very focused on our product and innovating that within Intune, Microsoft Config Manager, and the way that we manage it. But this is definitely feedback that will be interesting on the use cases and where there would be value in something like a home updater. So, it's something that we're always thinking about, like what are the needs out there, but today we don't have any intent short term to have a paid version of Home Updater for commercial use. But good feedback to know that's on the mind, but not something we're actively doing or something you can actively do today.
Quite a few questions have come in here talking about supporting for Mac operating systems or other operating systems.
Yeah, so we don't have anything actively on the roadmap today. I think you probably agree with that. Wow, like we haven't made any investment right now on creating the equivalent for Mac. It's PC focused, but always feedback that we're thinking about. So interesting to see how many we get on that. Yeah, no. So the question was, could you run as a different? So if you're logged in typically as a standard user, non-admin, could you run with a dedicated admin account? And the answer is yes to that. So if you were not an admin, you would get prompted to enter credentials, or you could do just Windows. You could do run as a different user. So even if you're logged in as a standard non-admin for least privilege, but you wanted to get updates running that could be system wide because that's required to be an admin to update things that are installed per system. You could just enter that admin account just whenever you want to run the Home Updater ad hoc. So I don't think that should be a problem.
Will there be a portable version of this new app 5.0? I leave it in my OneDrive so I can use it. I leave it on my OneDrive so I can use on any of my devices.
Yeah, so nothing committed on that front. What we'll do is in the webinar for some of these common feedback items that we're getting in the YouTube description, we'll link out to some ideas that we'll create for these specific requests and would be would be interested, like if that's a feature that you want, to go up and vote that so that we can understand how many people want specific features that we're hearing here. But it's not something that we'd have to kind of re-architect some of the way that we're keeping ourselves up to date and some of the benefits that we get by having an installer. So it would be interesting to hear the feedback, but there's nothing we wouldn't commit today to, like we're definitely going to have a portable for it.
Can the setup installation scripts be customizable? So, for example, I want to be able to install applications on a different drive. This is something that would be accessible on Home Updater as well as our enterprise products, correct?
Yeah, so for our enterprise products, you can for sure do some modifications to things like the command line. So you could add different paths, for example, if it supports installing in a different folder. Specifically for Home Updater itself, you wouldn't by default, like on the initial installation of products, like if you're coming into the app library, and let's say that you wanted to install a product on the D drive and not the C drive, we're going to just do the default silent installation for that product. So there's no configurability where you can customize the command line. Now, let's say in the event that you installed a product and you had it installed on a separate drive, typically if an app is updating itself and you're using Patch My PC Home Updater for that, and we're just using the silent command, most installers will retain the path that it's currently installed in. But if you're installing a new app for the first time within Home Updater, it's going to use the default silent command lines, which will typically install an app in program files. And that's not customization that you could change by default. Like there's no edit command line. We're just doing everything with the silent command line here. One potential that you could do is you could turn off the silent updates. And then when you click install, you could go through the installation wizard and choose, you could change the path in the UI. For the initial install would be one possible workaround, but you wouldn't be able to change command lines by default. And I think for something that complex, you're probably looking at more of a kind of enterprise configuration, versus your typical home user where we're installing apps. But interesting feedback there. But today it would just be that silent command line by default.
We have a slew of different customizations that we have in Home Updater. Is there any particular ones that this wasn't really a question in here, but I know we have customizations throughout our products. Is there anything in particular that you want to highlight for customizations in Home Updater?
I don't think outside of what we've already looked at, relatively simple. I don't think there's a whole lot here that would really, I think it's just what you prefer. They're all pretty simple and basic options here for what we have in Home Updater for V5.
Can this be used offline?
No, so it does need to have an internet connection for Home Updater. So this wouldn't be able to be used like in a caching mode. You would have to have access to the internet where you could reach out and we could always get our latest definitions and we can get our downloads, and it would require internet. Just want to thank everyone for joining. The questions and feedback will be really important as we continue to provide updates like V5. Like we made a lot of great improvements, but that doesn't mean we're not going to hear additional feedback. So we're going to keep iterating, improving the product. So any features that you want to see, let's make sure that we're getting that feedback, and we're continue to invest much more heavily than I would say we have been the previous 5 years with this major update, and taking that as momentum based on the feedback that we're hearing from people using Home Upadter. So once again, just thanks again for joining, and I hope this was helpful, and I hope you get installed on your PCs.